Was I wrong for being honest about why my boyfriend keeps getting rejected? I'm a 27-year-old woman, and I've been with my boyfriend, who is 31, since late 2023. We met through an online gaming group, and after we had been friends for a while, he decided to move across the border to my province for what he said was supposed to be a short stay. That short stay has now turned into nearly 3 years, and the savings from a settlement he received after an accident have basically disappeared. Before that money ran out, he had helped his uncle with a small roofing business and had a handful of short-term jobs in retail and food service, but nothing that lasted very long. Once he started applying for work again, he quickly became frustrated because employers either weren't calling him back or weren't moving him past the first round. He kept complaining that nobody wanted to hire him and started talking about moving back in with his parents. I work in people operations for a mid-sized company, so I'm the one in our relationship who actually deals with hiring, resumes, and interviews on a regular basis. When he showed me his resume, I could immediately see the problem. His work history was all over the place, he had long gaps between jobs, and at his age it made him look unreliable to employers. I told him that even for entry-level work, a nearly 30-year-old with very little consistent experience and no clear long-term pattern was going to have a harder time than someone who looked more stable on paper. He didn't take that well. He said I was being harsh and making him feel useless, especially because he's been trying to contribute to our household however he can. I do cover most of the bills, and I've only asked him to help with groceries and a few shared expenses, but he's been sensitive about not bringing in much money. I told him I wasn't trying to hurt him, but I also didn't want to lie to him about why his applications were being ignored. Looking back, I know I probably could have said it more gently. I was frustrated, and I let my annoyance show more than I should have. At the same time, I was trying to be honest about how an employer might see his background rather than pretending the issue was something mysterious. Now he says I humiliated him and made him feel like a failure when he was already stressed. I feel bad about the way I said it, but I still think the truth was important. Was I wrong for being blunt with him about why he's not getting hired? Was I wrong for giving my sister a real medical starter kit? My younger sister recently celebrated her birthday. We've always been pretty close, and over the last few months she's become really interested in medicine. She keeps talking about wanting to become a doctor one day. Since I work in healthcare, I thought it would be fun to encourage the interest with a doctor kit. I looked online, but everything I found was clearly made for much younger kids. Most of it was plastic, looked like a toy, and didn't seem like something she'd actually enjoy. Then I realized I already had some equipment at home that I no longer use because I'd upgraded over the years. For her birthday, I put together a kit with my old stethoscope, blood pressure cuff, pulse oximeter, thermometer, reflex hammer, a few procedure masks, a disposable gown, an elastic bandage, and some other harmless medical supplies. I also included a pair of scrubs that were just a little too big so she'd have something that looked the part as she grew into them. There was nothing sharp or unsafe in the kit. She absolutely loved it. After everyone had finished opening presents, I showed her how each item worked. She spent the rest of the evening pretending to examine everyone and was so excited that we practically had to convince her to stop playing long enough to eat dinner. Seeing how happy she was made me feel like I'd picked the perfect gift. The next day, though, my mom called me and said she was disappointed. She told me the gift was inappropriate because most of the equipment had already been used by me instead of being brand new. She also said the scrubs didn't fit perfectly and that my sister felt like I had been trying to save money instead of buying her a proper present. I explained that real medical equipment is expensive, and I honestly thought giving her authentic tools connected to something she's passionate about would mean more than buying a plastic toy. I also don't have a lot of extra money to spend on expensive new equipment. My mom said that if I couldn't afford something new, I should have chosen a completely different gift instead. She even compared it to another gift I had given one of my siblings in the past that she also thought wasn't appropriate. Now my mom is upset with me, and my sister has been distant too, even though she seemed genuinely thrilled when she opened the present. I honestly thought I had given her something thoughtful that showed I was paying attention to her interests. Now I'm wondering if I was wrong for giving her used medical equipment instead of buying something brand new. Was I wrong? Was I wrong for leaving my niece's first birthday after my sister humiliated me? My sister and I grew up in a very unstable home with an abusive stepfather, and for most of our childhood he did everything he could to make us compete with each other. Because of that, our relationship was rocky for years, but as adults we slowly repaired it and became genuinely close. I'm 27 now, and last weekend was my niece's first birthday party at my sister's new home outside Brisbane, Australia. I showed up with my girlfriend because I love my niece and I wanted to be there for such a big milestone. At first everything was going well. We were talking with family, looking around at my sister's new house, and I was genuinely happy for her because she had worked hard to make it feel like a home after a rough few years. At one point, one of her boyfriend's relatives asked me whether I was a chef. A few years ago I spent time in a hospitality course and almost finished it, but I left before graduating because it wasn't the right path for me. Before I could even answer, my sister loudly said, in front of everyone, that no, I wasn't a chef and that I had dropped out because I was a loser. The whole room went quiet. The man who had asked looked embarrassed and apologized for bringing it up, and I just stood there completely stunned. My girlfriend immediately took my arm and brought me outside because I was too humiliated to keep pretending everything was fine. After a minute or two, I decided I didn't want to stay anymore. I didn't make a scene, I didn't argue, and I didn't say anything rude to anyone. I simply left with my girlfriend because I felt embarrassed and unwelcome. A few minutes later, my sister texted me saying I had ruined my niece's birthday by making it about myself. That hurt even more, because I truly hadn't said a word to anyone at the party, and I had only left because she had publicly mocked me in front of people I barely knew. Now I keep wondering whether walking out was the wrong choice or whether I was justified in leaving after being humiliated like that. Was I wrong for tossing my sister into the pool but stopping her boyfriend from doing the same to me? I'm 29 and my younger sister is 21. We were at a family barbecue at our parents' place with relatives and a few long-time family friends. We had all been swimming and everyone was hanging around the backyard. My sister had just gotten out of the pool, dried herself off, and announced that she was starving and couldn't wait to eat. We have an ongoing joke because our mom has always worried about my sister gaining weight even though she's always been slim. Weight issues run on our dad's side of the family, and I sometimes tease our mom's attitude because I think she's been unfairly critical of my sister over the years. So when my sister said she was ready to eat, I jokingly asked if she'd gotten mom's permission first. She immediately laughed, called me an insulting nickname that we've jokingly used with each other for years, and I decided that deserved payback. Right before she went inside to change into dry clothes, I picked her up and tossed her back into the pool. This kind of thing has always been normal between us. We've spent our whole lives pulling harmless pranks on each other. If one of us ever crossed a line, we'd say so, apologize, and move on. The problem was her new boyfriend. They've only been together a short time, and I'd only met him a couple of times before this. As soon as he saw me throw my sister into the water, he immediately stood up and started walking toward me looking furious. I could tell exactly what he intended to do. I told him not to. He kept coming. I repeated myself and told him very clearly not to put his hands on me. By then, everyone nearby had noticed, and the atmosphere changed completely. He asked why I thought it was okay to throw my sister into the pool if I didn't want the same thing happening to me. I tried to keep things calm and explained that she's my younger sister. We've been messing with each other like this for years. I know her boundaries, and she knows mine. I also pointed out that he and I barely knew each other, so it wasn't the same situation. Instead of backing off, he stepped closer and reached toward me as if he was going to grab me anyway. At that point, I grabbed him too and told him that if I was going into the pool, he was coming with me. The only reason it didn't turn into an even bigger mess was because my mom stepped in and told both of us to knock it off. We let go of each other immediately. As he walked away, he warned me not to ever do that to my sister again while he was around. Meanwhile, my sister climbed out of the pool, laughed, made a rude gesture at me, and went inside to change. 5 minutes later, we were joking around again like nothing had happened. From my perspective, this was a harmless prank between siblings who know each other's limits. Her boyfriend seemed to think he needed to defend her from me, even though she wasn't upset and never asked him to step in. Some people have told me I should have expected him to react because he didn't understand our relationship. Others think he crossed a line by trying to physically confront me over something that had nothing to do with him. Was I wrong for stopping him from throwing me into the pool after I had thrown my sister in? Was I wrong for ordering food everyone wanted instead of catering to one friend? About a month ago, I hosted a movie night at my apartment for 5 close friends. They're basically my entire friend group where I live, and they all attended my wedding, so I was really looking forward to spending the evening together. I had planned everything for over a month because I wanted us to have a fun girls' night and watch a movie I had already seen and loved. Before everyone arrived, one friend asked if she could bring some fresh fruit to make a drink for everyone. I thought it sounded like a nice idea and told her to go for it. Another friend brought dessert, which was also thoughtful. However, she's an extremely picky eater. When she saw the fruit drink, she said she couldn't even sit near it because the combination of fruit and soda made her feel sick. She moved to the other side of the room, which made the friend who prepared the drink feel a little hurt since she put a lot of effort into making it. We eventually moved past it and enjoyed the movie. After the movie, we started deciding what to order for dinner. Since we all know this same friend has the most restrictions, we asked what she wanted first. She chose fried chicken. Then another friend said she wasn't in the mood for chicken and really wanted sushi instead. Rather than making everyone settle for one option, we decided to order from both restaurants. We figured the people who wanted sushi could have sushi, the people who wanted chicken could have chicken, and anyone who wanted both could have both. We also agreed everyone would only pay for the food they actually ordered. When I explained this, the friend who wanted chicken asked if the chicken order was just for her. I told her no. I said most of us would probably eat from both restaurants, while the friend who didn't want chicken would just eat sushi. That's when everything changed. She said we were singling her out because she doesn't eat sushi and that even the smell of it makes her feel nauseous. We tried explaining that we weren't excluding her at all. We were simply ordering 2 different kinds of food because different people wanted different things, and nobody would be paying for food they weren't eating. She kept insisting it wasn't fair. After a few minutes of back and forth, she walked into another room, sat on her phone, and barely spoke for the rest of the evening. She only quietly talked to her best friend, who had also come to the movie night. The atmosphere became really awkward. We eventually ate dinner, and not long afterward, the 2 of them left. That was a month ago. After everyone went home, I sent a message in our group chat thanking everyone for coming. She read it but never responded. A few days later, I shared something funny in the same chat, and again she saw it but didn't reply. I honestly didn't think ordering from 2 restaurants so everyone could have something they wanted was a big deal. I thought it was a reasonable compromise. Now I'm wondering if I should have apologized or handled the situation differently. Was I wrong? Was I wrong for wanting to keep our unconventional nanny? My husband and I have 3 children, ages 12, 7, and 5. We've had the same nanny, who I'll call Emma, for almost 2 years. The easiest way to describe Emma is that she's absolute chaos in human form. She's energetic, forgetful, spontaneous, and always seems to have a dozen ideas happening at once. As someone who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and with one of my children also having it, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if she has it too, although she's never said she does. She has had some unforgettable moments. A few weeks ago, she left me a voicemail about half an hour before school pickup saying she thought she'd somehow injured her shoulder, her arm had started tingling, and after reading online that it might need urgent medical attention, she was going to be late. Another time, my oldest needed supplies for a school assignment. Instead of stopping at the craft store just a few minutes from our house, she somehow convinced herself they had to drive to a discount store nearly half an hour away because she completely forgot the craft store existed. About once a week she'd pick the kids up from school and announce that she forgot to eat lunch, then ask if everyone wants fries, milkshakes, or some other quick snack while they're already out. One afternoon I came home to discover our entire living room covered with balloons and homemade decorations because the kids had decided our dog deserved a birthday party. The only problem was that the dog's birthday wasn't for another 3 months. On another occasion, I pulled into the driveway to find Emma sitting in a folding chair while my children were trying to sell lemonade, bracelets, cookies, and old toys to passing cars. Apparently, they decided to have a neighborhood fundraiser without telling either of us first. Every one of those things happened within the past couple of months. Despite all of that, she's incredibly good with our children. They're always safe, their homework gets finished, they rarely spend time glued to screens, and she's constantly coming up with creative activities that they absolutely love. They adore her. My husband, however, has reached the point where he wants to replace her. He says we need someone who's more organized, follows routines, keeps stricter boundaries, doesn't make spontaneous fast food stops, and won't accidentally miss activities like the one time she forgot swim lessons after the schedule changed from Fridays to Wednesdays. I don't want to let her go. I genuinely think she's been a fantastic fit for our family, even if she's unconventional. My husband says I'm dismissing his opinion even though she's helping raise our children too. Recently he started pointing out every little thing she does wrong, like leaving the family vehicle a bit cluttered after a busy day with the kids. He's even started sending me profiles of other potential nannies, most of whom seem much more traditional. The timing also feels strange to me. Not long ago, my oldest mentioned that he thought Emma was really pretty. Then, during a family vacation, he complained about sharing a bed with his younger brother and jokingly suggested sleeping in Emma's room instead because, according to him, she doesn't snore. Emma shut that down immediately before he could even finish explaining himself, and afterward I had a serious conversation with my son about appropriate boundaries between children and adults. Since then, there haven't been any similar incidents. Now I'm wondering whether I'm being unreasonable by refusing to replace someone who has been wonderful with our children simply because her style is a little chaotic. Was I wrong? Was I wrong for never mentioning I could speak my girlfriend's parents' language? I've been dating my girlfriend for almost 3 years. Her parents immigrated from another country and speak their native language fluently, although they also speak perfect German, which is my first language. My girlfriend never learned a native language, so every conversation between all of us has always been in German. What they didn't know is that I also understand and speak their language. It's a strange family story. My great-grandfather learned it while he was in prison during the war, taught it to his children, and the language was passed down through the family. Years later, I took classes to improve what I already knew because I found it interesting, and I still read articles, watch videos, and listen to podcasts in that language every now and then. I'm far from perfect, but I can comfortably hold a conversation. The thing is, it never seemed relevant. Everyone always spoke German around me. Occasionally my girlfriend's parents would exchange a quick comment with each other in their native language, but it was never anything private or inappropriate. It was usually just little jokes or random remarks that didn't affect anyone else. Since nobody ever asked whether I spoke it, I never thought to bring it up. Recently we were having dinner with them when one of their longtime family friends came over. He also speaks their native language. As the evening went on, the older generation started joking about how much tougher they were than people my age. It was all playful banter, and everyone was laughing. Eventually, I decided to answer him in his own language with something that basically meant, then prove it if you're so confident. The room immediately went silent. Nobody seemed offended by what I said. They were just completely shocked that I had spoken their language so naturally. Later, my girlfriend told me her parents felt uncomfortable because I'd apparently kept a huge secret from them for years. They couldn't understand why I never mentioned it and felt like I'd been hiding something. From my perspective, it simply never came up. They already knew about my family's history because we talked about it before. We even laughed about how my great-grandfather and some of their relatives had been in the same region during the war. But the conversation never turned to whether I actually spoke the language. I also wasn't secretly listening to private conversations. They never discussed anything sensitive around me, and if they ever had, I would have spoken up immediately instead of pretending I couldn't understand. As far as I was concerned, nothing would have been different if they'd known on day one. We communicated perfectly well in German the entire time. Now they are acting like I deliberately hid an important part of myself, while I honestly just never thought it mattered enough to mention. Was I wrong? Was I wrong for telling my husband that family leave isn't time off? I recently gave birth to our first child together, and the experience was nothing like we expected. The delivery turned into a medical emergency. I suffered severe complications after the birth, lost a dangerous amount of blood, and had to be rushed into emergency surgery. I'm still recovering physically and emotionally. Our baby was taken directly to the neonatal intensive care unit because he was born with a serious heart condition. Doctors have already told us he'll almost certainly need surgery, and they've since discovered another issue they're still investigating. Every day has been filled with fear and uncertainty. My husband has a 10-year-old son from a previous relationship. I've always supported their relationship and would never expect him to put one child above the other. I was happy for his son to meet the baby and spend time with his dad. What upset me was what happened just 2 days after I gave birth. I thought his son would stop by briefly with his mother to meet the baby before heading home. Instead, my husband picked him up early and they spent the entire day together. They visited a local attraction, had lunch, relaxed at home playing video games, and didn't part ways until late that evening. During the entire day, my husband only spent about 20 minutes visiting our newborn in intensive care and barely checked on me. My own mother stayed with me in the maternity ward, but she wasn't allowed into the neonatal unit, so I had to make my own way there while recovering from surgery and significant blood loss. When I tried explaining why I was hurt, I made it clear that I wasn't upset he wanted to spend time with his older son. I told him I simply hadn't expected to be left alone during one of the worst days of my life while our baby was critically ill. He immediately became defensive and said he was just being a good father. I told him that wasn't the point. I wasn't asking him to neglect one child for another. I needed him to be present for me as my husband and for our newborn during a genuine medical crisis. When I later tried explaining how serious my condition had been, he dismissed it by saying someone in his family had lost even more blood during childbirth and recovered. The following day, the doctors informed me they'd found another concerning issue with our baby's condition. When I told my husband, he complained that nobody had updated him. I reminded him that he had already left the hospital after spending such a short time with our son. I've now been discharged, but our baby is still in intensive care. Every minute I'm away from him feels unbearable, yet my husband spent another morning taking his older son to see a movie instead of being at the hospital. Eventually, I told him that family leave wasn't supposed to feel like paid vacation. I said I appreciated that he wanted to spend time with both children, but I also needed a partner who would support me through this nightmare. I even admitted that if he was going to be gone most of the time anyway, it would almost make more sense for him to return to work so I'd at least know why I was handling everything by myself. He insists I'm being unfair because he's simply trying to divide his attention between both of his children. Was I wrong? Should I have bought my daughter-in-law coffee after she ignored me for years? My son married his wife about 4 years ago, and one thing has always bothered me. She is a huge coffee lover. Every morning she stops somewhere to grab a specialty drink, and if she's already going out, she usually offers to pick something up for everyone else too. The problem is that she has never once brought me the drink I ask for. I do not drink coffee. I enjoy tea, especially flavored tea lattes or iced tea from coffee shops. Whenever she asks the family if anyone wants something, I reply with a simple tea order. Every single time she comes back carrying drinks for everyone except me. When I asked why, she laughed and told me tea was just flavored hot water and not worth spending money on. I explained that I was not asking for anything expensive. Most of the drinks everyone else ordered cost far more than mine. She just shrugged and said I could make tea at home. This became especially annoying on family road trips. I was almost always the one driving. She would collect everyone's coffee orders while I was pumping gas or paying for fuel. When she came back, everyone else had a drink except me. Then I had to leave the car and stand in line just to buy my own tea before we could get back on the road. I brought it up several times over the years, but nothing ever changed. She kept insisting tea was something I could make myself, so there was no reason for her to buy it. Last weekend, my son and his wife asked me to watch the grandchildren while they attended an event. Before heading over, I texted the group saying I was stopping at a coffee shop and asked if anyone wanted anything. Everyone sent me their orders, including my daughter-in-law. I decided to do exactly what she had done to me for years. I bought drinks for my son, my husband, and myself, but I left hers behind. When I arrived, I handed everyone their drinks except her. She immediately asked where hers was. I calmly reminded her that this was exactly how she had treated me every time she stopped for coffee. She argued it was different because I could always make tea at home. I replied that she could just as easily make coffee at home since there was a coffee maker sitting on the kitchen counter. She became upset and my son stepped in. He said I was acting childish and should apologize and go buy her drink. I refused. I told them I had tried talking about this for years, and since she never cared how it made me feel, I was done pretending it was acceptable. I also made it clear that if she continued leaving me out whenever she bought drinks for everyone else, I would never buy one for her either. They left angry, and several relatives have since told me I should have taken the high road instead of making a point this way. Was I wrong for finally giving my daughter-in-law a taste of her own medicine? Was we wrong for leaving our friend behind after he had ignored every warning? A couple of years ago, 3 friends and I took a week-long trip to a Greek island to celebrate finishing university. We'd all been close for years, and traveling together had never been a problem. One guy in our group, who I'll call Ryan, had one habit that drove everyone crazy. He was late for absolutely everything. If we agreed to meet somewhere at 8 o'clock in the morning, he'd still be getting dressed half an hour later. It didn't matter if it was a lecture, a dinner reservation, or a flight. He always believed everyone else could wait. On the last day of our vacation, we had plenty of time before our flight, so Ryan decided he wanted to go exploring on his own. We weren't worried because we still had several hours before we needed to leave. His suitcase was already packed, and we told him we'd load it into the rental car so everything would be ready when he got back. A few hours later, we called him to remind him it was probably time to head back. He casually said he was finishing a drink at a cafe and would start making his way back soon. Another couple of hours passed, and we called again. He insisted he was on his way, but something didn't sound right. We checked his location and discovered he was still sitting at a cafe several miles away. There was no chance he could walk back in time. We told him he needed to call a taxi immediately. Instead, he refused because he didn't want to spend the money. He said he'd just walk faster. We explained that our ride to the airport was already booked and couldn't be delayed. We even told him we'd leave his luggage at the villa if he somehow made it back before we left, or he could meet us directly at the airport if he managed to find another ride. He kept saying not to worry and promised he'd make it. He didn't. By the time we had checked in and boarded the plane, he finally started sending panicked messages asking where we were and when our ride was coming to pick everyone up. All we could do was tell him we'd already left and that he'd have to arrange another flight home. He was furious. Later, his girlfriend and his parents blamed us for abandoning him in another country. From our perspective, though, we'd warned him repeatedly, asked him to turn back early, begged him to take a taxi, and gave him every opportunity to make it. He simply chose not to. Were we wrong for leaving without him? Was I wrong for refusing to let my mom move into my new home? I'm a 34-year-old man who has lived on my own since I was 21. I started out in tiny rental apartments, worked my way up in my career, and after years of saving, I finally had an offer accepted on my first townhouse. It's easily the biggest financial step I've ever taken, and I was excited to finally have a place that was completely mine. My mother still lives in the house my parents bought decades ago. It's completely paid off, and she lives there with my younger sister, who has a full-time job but stays there because it lets her save money. For years, whenever my mom gets into an argument with one of my siblings, she starts saying she's had enough of everyone, wants to sell the house, and move somewhere else. Every time she says it, the rest of us try to talk her out of it because selling our mortgage-free home just to start over doesn't make much financial sense. The problem started the day she found out I had bought my own place. Instead of congratulating me, she immediately started talking about how she'd finally have somewhere new to live. She wasn't joking either. She began telling relatives that once I moved in, she'd be moving into because she deserved to enjoy the house after everything she'd done raising me. I told her that wasn't happening. I explained that I'd spent years working toward having my own home because I wanted my own space and my own life. She isn't losing her home, she isn't being forced out, and she is a perfectly good place to live already. I wasn't buying a house so someone else could decide to move into it. She completely lost it. She accused me of abandoning her, said I clearly didn't love my own mother, and claimed I was selfish and ungrateful after everything she'd sacrificed for me growing up. What makes this even stranger is that I'm not even the oldest child. I have 2 older brothers with families of their own who are still renting because money has been tighter for them over the years. The way I see it, my mom isn't looking for somewhere she needs to live. She's looking around to see which of her children has the nicest situation so she can move in wherever life will be easiest for her. That doesn't sit right with me. If she was sick, losing her home, or had nowhere else to go, I wouldn't hesitate to help. But this isn't an emergency. She has a fully paid house and a stable place to live. She simply wants to leave because she's frustrated with the people already living there. Now several relatives are saying I should just let her stay for a little while because she's my mother, while others think setting boundaries is perfectly reasonable. Was I wrong for telling my mother she isn't moving into my new house when she already is one of her own? Was I wrong for refusing to sit near a child because of his hygiene? My wife and I took our 2 children on a week-long holiday at an all-inclusive resort in southern Spain. We had been looking forward to the trip for months because it was supposed to be a relaxing break before the kids went back to school. A family staying at the resort had a teenage son, around 14 years old, who clearly had additional needs. I completely understand that some disabilities come with behaviours that are difficult to manage, and I genuinely felt sympathy for both him and his parents. The problem was that one of his habits made a lot of people uncomfortable. Throughout the day he would repeatedly put his hands inside the back of his shorts, scratch himself, then immediately suck on his fingers. A few minutes later he would wander over to the buffet, grab food with his bare hands instead of using the serving utensils, and continue touching things everyone else was about to eat. He also loved approaching strangers. He would try to start conversations with anyone nearby and regularly reached out to hug people without asking first. After watching this happen several times, I quietly spoke with a member of the hotel staff. They thanked me for bringing it up and said they would keep a closer eye on the buffet. The next day I noticed an employee helping serve him food, so I assumed they had addressed the issue. Unfortunately, the personal boundaries continued. The boy approached my family several times, and whenever he tried to hug me, I politely stepped back and smiled to avoid embarrassing him. Eventually I spoke privately with his mother. I apologized before saying anything and explained that I wasn't trying to be rude, but because of the hygiene issues I wasn't comfortable having her son touch me or my children. I thought the conversation was respectful, even if it was awkward. A couple of days later we all boarded a coach for a sightseeing trip. There were plenty of open seats, but the boy walked straight toward me and tried to sit beside me. I calmly stood up and moved to another seat. His mother immediately accused me of being cruel. I quietly explained that it wasn't about her son having a disability. I simply wasn't comfortable sitting next to someone who had repeatedly put his hands down the back of his shorts and then touched his face and other people. Instead of accepting that, she raised her voice and said he couldn't help it because of his condition. At that point I lost my patience. I replied that I wasn't judging her son, but I also wasn't going to ignore basic hygiene. I said I didn't want someone touching me after digging around in their shorts and then putting their fingers in their mouth. That only made things worse. For the rest of the trip, she seemed determined to make me the bad guy. More than once she encouraged her son to go over to where my family was sitting, even after I had politely asked for some personal space. I spoke to hotel management again, but they said there wasn't much they could do beyond reminding guests to respect one another. Now I'm wondering if I crossed a line by refusing to sit next to him and by finally saying exactly why I felt uncomfortable, or if it was reasonable to expect basic hygiene and personal boundaries regardless of the circumstances. Was I wrong for refusing to be the official maid of honor? My best friend and I have been inseparable since we were teenagers. We met when we were both 15, stayed close through college, and have been there for each other through pretty much every major event in our lives. When I got married 3 years ago, she was my maid of honor. She planned my bachelorette weekend, helped organise the bridal shower, handled 100 little problems on the wedding day, and was basically the person I relied on whenever something went wrong. So when she got engaged earlier this year, I naturally assumed I would have an important role in her wedding. I was right about that part, just not in the way I expected. She told me she wanted her younger brother to be the man of honor. I was surprised, but I tried not to take it personally. He is her only sibling, they are very close, and I completely understood why she wanted him standing beside her. I told her I was happy for both of them and was looking forward to being part of the wedding party. Then the actual expectations started coming out. She asked me to organize the bachelorette trip. Then she asked me to help coordinate the bridal shower. Then she wanted me to help design and assemble decorations because she was trying to keep costs down. She also told me that I would be the person everyone should contact if there were questions or problems during the wedding. At first, I assumed she was simply asking me for help because we're close friends. Then I realized I was being given essentially every responsibility normally handled by the maid of honor. I finally asked her what her brother was supposed to be doing as man of honor. She said he would stand beside her during the ceremony, give a speech, help with some pictures, and be there for her. I pointed out that I was also supposed to be there for her, except I was apparently expected to do all the work too. Her response was that her brother wasn't really good at organizing things and she didn't want to put too much pressure on him. That irritated me. He's 29 years old. He's a college graduate, has a full-time job, lives on his own, and is perfectly capable of organizing a few wedding tasks. When I pointed it out, she laughed and said that he was still her little brother and she didn't want to overwhelm him. I reminded her that she had no problem giving me a huge list of responsibilities. She told me I was taking the situation too seriously and that the title didn't really matter. That's when I finally snapped. I told her that if the title didn't matter, then there shouldn't be a problem with giving it to me if I'm already expected to do the work. I said I was happy to be a bridesmaid and support her, but I wasn't willing to spend months planning her wedding, organize her bachelorette party, coordinate vendors and guests, make decorations, and manage problems on the wedding day while someone else received the title. She told me I was being petty and making her wedding about myself. I told her I wasn't asking her to remove her brother from the wedding party. I was simply saying that I wasn't going to perform the job of maid of honor without actually being the maid of honor. I gave her two choices. Either I would be given the responsibilities that matched my role as a bridesmaid, or she could officially make me maid of honor if she wanted me handling all of those duties. If she wanted her brother to remain man of honor and do nothing beyond the ceremonial parts, that was completely fine. But then she needed to find someone else to handle the extra work. She became extremely upset and told several mutual friends that I was threatening to abandon her wedding because I cared more about a title than our friendship. Now some people think I'm being ridiculous because maid of honor is just a label and I'm already her closest friend. Others understand why I'd be annoyed at being expected to do the job without getting the role. I honestly don't care about being called important just for the sake of it. What bothers me is being told the title doesn't matter while apparently being expected to carry all of the responsibilities that come with it. Was I wrong for refusing to do the maid of honor's job without actually being the maid of honor? Was I wrong for staying with my girlfriend instead of walking the dog? I'm 20 and still live with my parents. My girlfriend is also 20 and we have been together for a little over a year. A few nights ago, she was at my house and we were watching a movie in my room. Everything was normal until she started getting a migraine. She told me it was much worse than the headache she normally gets and that she was starting to feel sick. She took her medication, which usually makes her sleepy, and eventually curled up beside me with her head against my shoulder. After a while, she fell asleep. She finally looked comfortable, so I stayed where I was and kept the television quiet. About half an hour later, my mom sent a message to our family group chat asking me to help with the dogs. We have two dogs. One is small and easy to walk, but the other is a large dog who gets extremely excited outside and pulls hard on the leash. Usually my dad or I walk him because my mom struggles to control him when he starts pulling. My dad was making dinner at the time, so my mom asked me to take the bigger dog while she handled the other one. I replied that I couldn't right then because my girlfriend had a bad migraine and was asleep against me. My mom immediately responded that my girlfriend could obviously survive without me for 20 minutes and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. My dad joined in and said I was being ridiculous. He said the dog needed to be walked and that I could easily get up, take him around the block, and come back. I told them I understood, but I didn't want to wake my girlfriend when she had finally managed to fall asleep. I suggested that my dad finish cooking, walk the dog afterward, and I would take care of all the dishes and clean the kitchen so he wouldn't have to do it. My dad said that wasn't the point. I offered to take my girlfriend home later and do the dishes afterward, but he kept insisting that I was being unreasonable over something that would take less than half an hour. Eventually my mom and dad just stopped responding. They walked both dogs themselves. I thought that was the end of it. The following afternoon, my dad brought it up again. He said he was still angry that I had refused to help because my girlfriend was lying around in my room. I explained again that she wasn't feeling well and that I didn't want to disturb her while she was sleeping. My younger sister, who was 15, overheard the argument and said that from the outside it sounded like my girlfriend was using her migraine to keep me from doing anything else. That really annoyed me. I told them that I wasn't choosing my girlfriend over my family. I simply decided that someone who was in significant pain and finally sleeping peacefully didn't need to be woken up so I could walk a dog when another adult in the house could do it. I also reminded my dad that I had offered to do the dishes and clean the kitchen in exchange. He said that wasn't the issue. According to him, the issue was that I had ditched my family for some girl. At that point I lost my temper and told him to get over himself. I left the house because I knew the argument was going nowhere. My mom later told me that even if I disagreed with my dad, the way I spoke to him was disrespectful and I should apologize. Now I feel guilty about that part. I probably shouldn't have told him to get over himself, and I know I could have handled the argument much better. But I still don't understand why everyone thinks I was wrong for not waking my girlfriend up when she was having a particularly bad migraine just to walk the dog for 20 minutes. Was I wrong for staying with her instead of helping with the dog?